Wrong explosion, one betrayed promise, and a silent gunman walking out of fire with nothing left to lose. This is a story of raw justice, slow-burning rage, and revenge carved in stone. If you love classic Western grit, 1970s intensity, and stories that hit hard and stay with you, subscribe now, because stories like this don't get told anymore, and you won't want to miss what comes next. In the dust-choked borderlands where the sun burned like judgment and men learned early that mercy was a luxury, the story began with an explosion that split the afternoon open and announced to the vultures that another chapter of blood had been written, because in 1970 the land still remembered dynamite better than prayers, and the man at the center of it all was a lone figure shaped by silence, a gunman whose name people spoke only after checking over their shoulders. A man whose eyes carried the weight of too many endings and not enough beginnings, and he rode into the frontier town of San Cordova on a mule that limped like the past itself, unnoticed at first because broken things often are, until the ground shook from a distant blast and every memory he had buried came roaring back like fire through dry grass. For years earlier he had been a hired hand with steady hands and a code that refused to bend, working the mines under a ruthless consortium that promised prosperity while bleeding the land and the men dry. And among those men had been his brother, younger, hopeful, foolish enough to believe that honest work could outrun corruption, until the day the company men decided a collapse was cheaper than safety and sealed the tunnels with dynamite while voices still echoed inside, and the official story blamed fate and bad rock while the real story was buried under paperwork and bribes, except the gunman remembered every name, every face, every laugh shared over tin cups at night, and he remembered how he had been held back at gunpoint while the fuses were lit, how the blast rolled through the hills like thunder made solid, and how afterward the company paid widows with silence and threats, and that was the day something inside him went cold and precise, because revenge for him was never loud, it was patient, and San Cordova was where patience finally ended, because the men who signed those orders now owned the town, wore clean suits in dirty places, and hid behind sheriffs who mistook authority for justice, and as the gunman dismounted and stepped into the street, spurs whispering against stone, people felt it without knowing why, the way animals sense a storm, and he moved through the town like a memory no one wanted to face, stopping first at the cantina where lies were cheaper than whiskey and the bartender froze when he saw those eyes, because he had once taken a payoff to forget a name, and the gunman asked quietly for water, not whiskey, because clarity mattered. And when a drunk laughed and reached for trouble, the gunman disarmed him without drawing blood, a reminder that violence was a choice, not a reflex, and word spread fast that someone dangerous had arrived, which brought the sheriff, a heavy man with a silver star and a history of looking the other way, who tried to bluff authority until the gunman leaned close and spoke a single date, the date of the mine collapse, and the sheriff's confidence leaked out like air from a punctured tire, because guilt recognizes its own language, and instead of shooting, the gunman walked past him, because dead men told no stories and he needed the truth alive, and the truth lived uphill in a white house built with blood money, where the consortium leader dined on imported food while the town starved, and the gunman waited until night, because night stripped men down to who they really were, and under the cover of darkness he placed charges not to destroy but to threaten, small explosions that shattered windows and illusions, sending a message written in fire that debts were being collected. And when guards searched the perimeter they found nothing but shadows and fear, because he moved like a ghost with a purpose, and by morning the town buzzed with rumors of a vengeful spirit, which suited him fine, because legends traveled faster than bullets, and as the pressure tightened, old alliances cracked, and a woman stepped forward from the edges of the story, a former schoolteacher turned journalist after the mine disaster stole her husband, a woman who had tried to expose the truth and been silenced, and when she recognized the gunman, she saw not a killer but a reckoning, and together they traded information like ammunition, each revelation bringing the past into sharper focus, uncovering that the collapse had been intentional not just for profit but to eliminate workers who had discovered illegal arms shipments hidden in the mines, weapons bound for a border war that would make the consortium richer and the land poorer. And now the gunman's revenge widened from personal to necessary, because some evils demanded more than private justice. And when the consortium realized they were cornered, they hired mercenaries, men with no ties and no mercy, turning San Cordova into a waiting room for hell. And the gunmen prepared not with bravado but with strategy, using the terrain, the old tunnels, the forgotten paths, turning every advantage of the powerful into a weakness, and the final confrontation came not in the street but in the mind itself, where it had all begun, because endings should rhyme with beginnings, and as gunfire echoed through the tunnels and dust filled the air, the gunman confronted the man who had signed the order, who pleaded and justified and blamed the times, and the gunman listened, because understanding an enemy was part of ending them, and then he left him alive but trapped, sealing the tunnel without dynamite, forcing him to face the darkness he had sentenced others to, because sometimes the cruelest justice was survival without escape, and when the dust settled and the mercenaries fled, exposed and unpaid, San Cordova woke to a different morning, one where truth had teeth and fear had changed sides, and the journalist published everything, names, dates, proof, and the consortium fell under the weight of daylight, and the gunman did not stay to be thanked or cursed, because redemption was not a place, it was a direction, and he rode out as quietly as he had arrived, leaving behind a town that would argue for years whether he had been a hero or a devil, but in the borderlands, where law often lagged behind justice, they would remember one thing clearly, that in 1970, when dynamite and vengeance ruled the land, a silent man proved that even the most carefully buried sins could still explode, and that revenge, when sharpened by truth, could become something dangerously close to justice.